Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Acelith Design Endurance Championship 2020 Season 6. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and we're back with round 7 of the championship in what is the final season of 2020 for ADEC, and we have got an absolutely brilliant race ahead for you. In the fact that after 6 rounds so far, we have seen a massive competition, not only for the win of the Tier 1 Championship in Season 6, but also for potential positions from P3 all the way down to P9. It is that close, and this race could be a key decider over the coming final 2 races in terms of who is our overall winner for Season 6, who is P2 in Season 6, and who is 3rd overall in the standings. Now, last time out, the series was in Austria. We were in the Group 4 category cars racing around the Red Bull Ring Short, and we saw that one driver in particular was able to break away from the field and establish dominance over the field over the course of the race distance, and that of course was Zefix's Jack from the United Kingdom. The newcomer in Tier 1 making his hallmark and staple mark on the series, following off from where he left off in Season 5 with Tier 2. But of course, the reigning champion of Tier 1, Plucks the Duck, who is definitely racing tonight and currently out on circuit getting warmed up, is still leading in the championship by 4 points over Jack, and it's going to be whether Plucks can hit back today hard and pick up the win and the maximum points haul of 54 points, 2 for the fastest lap and 2 for pole position, in order to put himself in the best possible position going into the final round as of next week. Just now, it is good to have you tuning in, of course, and I hope you're all doing well. I'm hopeful we have not got a camera glitch building up here. If so, this is going to be a bit of a disaster. And as Gadget comes out here, hopefully the camera resets on the car. Perfect, the camera has reset, so good news, ladies and gentlemen. All of our cameras are working, and Gadget is going to be the first driver out on circuit. Now, let's talk about Sardinia B2. It's a fictional circuit set in the hills of Italy. A wonderful circuit. You've got the wind turbines in the background, which add a rather nice backdrop through the hilly side and the scape of Italy. But the thing about this circuit in particular is it is a very tight circuit, and you do not normally see Group 2 machines racing around here. The thing about the track is it's 12 corners, and the lap time on average is about 1 minute 12 to 1 minute 13 in terms of race pace, and in qualifying we could be looking at laps that go into the mid 111s. We're probably looking for a 111.5 for the pole position lap here. What this means is the track comes at you hard and fast. You've got a number of low speed corners, particularly Sector 3, the final sector, is dominated by low speed corners. Sector 2 has one nasty low speed corner, which is turn number 5. And then you've got this final corner here, the very final corner, turn 12, which is again a low speed corner where you've got to get things right. As we switch on board with Gadget and go for a lap. So he's going to be coming down to the start-finish straight here to start his first qualifying lap. Staying over to the right-hand side, and the aim of this is he's going to swing the car across the entry curve into turn number 1. A little kink here before turn 1, so he's going to swing it across, stamp on the brakes down to 3rd gear, and then rotate the car across the inside curve. In fact, staying in 4th gear there to stabilise the car more. And now through turn 2, upshifting in 5th, and then doing a very slight lift to rotate the car through. And then coming into turns 3 and 4 here, a double bank turn, if you will, a dual apex. Now charging down the hill after Sector 1's complete towards turn number 5. Braking hard here, missing the apex curve then, he actually missed his braking point by about 2 to 3 metres, that's why he extended wide of apex, and now charging through 6, and then up the hill here through the right-hander of 7, flat out, and now we're coming up into the Italian carousel for 8, braking at the 50 board, and you'll see that he's going to come down to either 4th or 3rd gear here to get the rotation through the rear of the car. Bit of oversteer there, and now going over the top to 9, and he's going to be coming into 3rd gear, and you've got to be careful on 9 here. You don't want to get on the power too soon. Downshifting to 2nd there, interestingly, which will cost him some time but gives him rotation. Now 10 and 11, a medium to high speed chicane here. You'll see he's going to snap the car as tight to left as possible for 11, and now braking hard for turn number 12, and now he's going to power himself across to the finish line in order to complete a lap. And as we follow him in, we're expecting this is going to be approximately a 1 minute 12, probably a high 112 here, and it is a 112.8. And Bottle Job always goes a little bit faster on these opening laps, and it's a 112.2 for Bottle Job, a 112.9 for Flapjack, and we can see more and more cars coming through the picture in the rear of your shot right now as Flapjack has come across. And we flick over to Jaggernaut here. What's he going to be able to set after his first qualifying lap? It is a 112.3, and already we have got lap times that are starting to move towards the 111s. as we can see that so far the fastest lap has been Pluxted up with 1:12.0, a very fast lap there, and closely followed, in fact, with 2 tenths down is Sir Bottlejob, sitting on that 1:12.2. And Zefix's Jack not having the best opening qualifying lap here, only 2 hundredths off of Sir Bottlejob as more and more laps are coming in, and G-Rabbit has just come across the line with a provisional P8 so far of a 1:12.8. Now you may be wondering a little thing about the drivers or two in terms of what do they have to think about here in terms of the cornering or in terms of track limits. Now the only track limit they've really got to worry about here, and we'll stay with G-Rabbit to give you a demonstration of this, is the track limit on the very last corner. Now you can see a number of these corners do have a red-white curb on their outside, both in terms of their entry and exit, as G-Rabbit gets pulled off onto the gravel there, overextending turn 5 a little bit too much. But what those curbs are followed by is that blue runoff area. It's a little bit less grippy compared to the standard tarmac, but you can use it as a runoff if you want to extend corners, as Zefix's Jack improves to a 1:12.1, moving into provisional P2. But it's the final corner in particular whereby you have this large runoff area of a blue strip beyond the red and white curb. But you can see the white lines going around the edge of the circuit denoting the track limits. On that final corner, if our drivers place all 4 wheels beyond the white line, so they're not allowed to put all 4 wheels beyond that white line or all 4 wheels onto the combination of the runoff area and the curb, what you can imagine is our drivers will be subject to a 2 to 3 second penalty, which they'll have to burn off in the race. As G-Rabbit comes through to complete another lap, a 1:13.1, not improving this time on the super soft tyres. As you can see, they're starting to get a little bit of wear, particularly on the front left. There's a small bit of graining building up, as this track is, of course, clockwise, which means there's more right-handers than there are left-handers, and that means the left-hand side of the car is going to experience more G-force being put through it, and so the tyres will experience more wear by comparison with some of the others. But let's hop away from G-Rabbit as Jack is in the pits, and we'll follow Muller CJ for a little bit. Now Muller here currently sitting on, well, let's take a look at his lap time. We can see that Muller is sitting on a 1:13.2. Hasn't had the best of qualifying runs so far, as he's coming through here, going a bit wide out for and immediately having to stamp on the brakes there because he went onto the gravel and tried to get the power down. And again, that's meant that he has gone wide with dirt on the tyres. So this is going to be an aborted out lap by Muller as he's trying to get those tyres warmed up. And I think they're going to feel a little bit of overwear now before he gets on to his qualifying lap here. And that's the thing about the tyres with these racing super softs that our drivers have brought to the table today. They do have the option of the softer, medium and the hard available as well, but the super soft just gives you so much more time around this circuit because of the grippier surface that it offers. And the thing about the super soft in terms of a comparison with the soft, as Muller goes into the wall, oh goodness me, that was a bit of a disaster for Muller. Now we're just going to play that back to give you an idea of what can happen in the race. So the thing with turn number 9 in particular is that this is a difficult corner because you want to get on that power early, but if you go out onto that gravel, you'll end up pranging the wall, and that's what essentially led to Muller spinning the car around and having to retreat back to the pits immediately. And that's something our drivers have got to be very careful about as they go through turn number 9 in particular, is the fact that that corner is misleading. It is a downhill entry under braking, and it's a downhill apex. The gradient of the road only flattens out once you pass the apex of the corner, and as Bottlejob comes across the line here to begin another lap, having picked up some distance slipstream by the looks of things, you can see that he's going to be impeded a little bit by Mr. Sean, who's going to immediately stay over to the left with the pit white line exit line there. But because turn 9 is a downhill entry point, it means the car carries a lot more momentum and you need to be patient before you get on the power. You've got to be very gentle with applying the power. But we'll stay with Bottlejob right now and see what he can do currently in P3. Nobody's moved into the 1:11s yet, including Pluxted, our provisional pole sitter. But will Bottlejob be able to improve as he aborts the lap there? He's had a disastrous lap, and that means that some other drivers may have the opportunity to improve here with 8 minutes to go of qualifying. So we're almost at the halfway point. And we're just going to get rid of a little bit of the information on the screen right now for you, clear the screen clutter, and we can see that Flapjack has just improved to a 1:12.4, and as Jagannac comes across the line, it is not an improvement for on the Frenchman, so he's going to go around for another lap and see if he can improve, of course. But once the laps start to come down in terms of the number available, you can imagine that our drivers who are really trying to make their way out through the field, you're going to see some absolute monster laps come through, or other drivers just decide to retreat to the pits. Now, as Jagannac's coming through here through turn number 5 once more, you can see using the full width there, and whilst he hasn't got the aero package on this 2008 Nissan GTR, if he can nail those corners, he is going to feel a small benefit on the straights because the car does have the better acceleration in general, and he also, if he can be towards the front after qualifying, then he's going to have a very good opportunity at the start. What with the fact he will not have the turbo lag And that is associated with the 2016 cars, the 2008 cars not having that turbo, of course. So that means Jagannat could really surprise everyone with a phenomenal start. But Jagannat coming charging through now to complete his lap. Let's see if he's able to improve from his current lap as he's coming around here, currently sitting on a 1:12.3 if RI serve as well. Yeah, 1:12.361. And will this be an improvement as Flapjack improves to 1:12.372? Jagannat improved to a 1:12.1. Now that is a sizable improvement, and that puts him right on the front of the second row of the grid here, and that could really start to scupper the aspirations of Bottle Job and Flapjack, who are pushing hard as Jagannat goes off at turn 1 a little bit. I think you'll feel really chuffed with that effort. Now looking further around the field, let's take a look at Senna at this point in time, who's currently having blue flags waved at him. I think he is on effectively what is a bit of an outlap here, as he's got 2 cars coming up behind him, and he will need to get out of the way as soon as possible. You can see Jagannat's coming through after a lap, and Sir Bottle Job is coming through with him. Now, you may notice as well that some drivers... Hold on a second, ladies and gentlemen. We have a major improvement from Zephyx's Jack, improving to a 1:11.7. That is a ferocious lap, and that is the fastest lap we have seen in qualifying so far. Not the fastest lap we have seen in pre-practice. That fastest lap in the practice session before qualifying today was a 1:11.6 as held by Plux the Duck. But now the margin between P1 and P2 out to 3 tenths, and the question will be, can Plux, alternatively Ultimax or Jagannat respond to that, or even Sir Bottle Job? And we can see as well in the background of your shot, Mr. Sean did improve his lap to a 1:13.1, but he has not improved to the point to get into that top 10 yet, so we'll keep our eyes on Mr. Sean. With Jack coming through once again, that was a major improvement. You do have to wonder how much more Jack has got. And some of our drivers right now may be trying to eye up a little bit of slipstream on a car in front of them, maybe trying to get into that 8 tenths of a second zone behind the car in front, so that way they're able to get some slipstream down the straights. But of course, the dirty air will mean they carry a little bit more understeer through the corners, and particularly in the final sector, you do not want that innate understeer if you can help it, or if you've got it, you've got to be used to it. You can see Jack there using the full width of the circuit as within the track limits as he comes to the end of this lap. Does he improve again? We're going to find out any second now, and it is not an improvement from Jack. So I think Jack has essentially pushed it to a limit so far, although we've still got 5 minutes remaining as Gadget comes across and does not improve. Gadget currently sitting provisional P7 with a 1:12.4. That's a good lap by Gadget, and whilst the margin would suggest it's a long way off of our pole sitter, you do have to keep in mind here that it's going to be small margins because it is a short circuit and it is a very powerful circuit around here. It is going to be small margins that define cars all the way from, say, P3 to P7. And to give you an idea, P3 at the moment is sitting on, in Awesome Alex's case, and this is perfect for Awesome Alex, we should point out, so he really needs the points today in order to avoid the relegation zone. Awesome Alex sitting on that 1:12.1, and then Gadget is sitting on what was at the time, I believe, a 1:12.3. That's how tight it is from P3 all the way down to P7, a space of 2 tenths. As we can see that Awesome Alex now is trying to follow Muller CJ through the final 2 sectors here, and of course he'll start to get that distant toe, particularly if Muller CJ does not have the greatest of final sectors, and that's perhaps what Awesome Alex is trying to rely on, in the fact that he is going to see if he can stay within a slipstream zone, albeit you can see that he's also not running the car hard right now, so he might be debating internally whether he really wants that slipstream or he just wants a clean air lap. Now, if it was personally me, I prefer to qualify without any slipstream whatsoever before I go for a lap, simply because then I'm literally at full control of the car and I haven't got any external factors. But you can see Alex backing off completely. He wants to go for an absolute clean lap, and we're going to oblige him preparing for it by riding on board with the British driver as he goes for his run. So he's got a really good launch out of turn number 12, and as he comes onto this qualifying lap with 3.5 minutes remaining. So 6th gear at the moment, he's going to hit approximately 172 miles an hour before he comes under braking into turn 1. 173 there, braking as late as humanly possible, using 4th gear there and getting on the power very nicely with the cut over the curb there. 4th gear stabilising the rear of the car, hanging it right to the inside. You can see lifted to 50% throttle on apex there, going up into 5th gear and now hanging the car hard through turns 3 and 4. Not having the smoothest of runs through 4 in particular, as G-Rabbit improves to a 1:12.6. We'll see where that places him in a second. Alex then getting a really good run out of 5 using the full width and indeed the flow of the rear of the car in the form of the NSX with that mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain as mentioned earlier. It will give this car a little bit of advantage through those snappier corners. Now coming into the carousel, can he get it nailed here? Trail braking in very late here, upshifting to 3rd and immediately rotating rotating through on power, and now into turn number 9. This is make or break in terms of sector 3. In fact, can he get on that power as soon as possible? Almost on the gravel there. You can see he's pushing it to the utmost limit in terms of what the car is able to do. Whilst Plucks the Duck improves to 112.0, but that's not into the 111s yet. And now coming into the final corner. Does he nail the final corner? He does indeed, and he's just within the limits there. I don't think that's going to be a penalty. That was right on the white line with his right-hand tyres, and I think we could be seeing a major improvement from Alex here as he comes across the line, and it is a 111.8. So Alex right now, provisional P2. A phenomenal lap by Alex to improve to P2, and we're going to have to wonder whether Plucks, Jaggernaut, Bottle Job and Flapjack are going to respond to that, or indeed Gadget, because it is so close at the moment in the battle for those low 112s and trying to get into the 111s, as there's only 2 minutes remaining in qualifying. Cracking lap by the British driver there. And as we look around, we're going to take a quick look at G-Rabbit right now, who did improve whilst we were watching Alex, and we can see that G-Rabbit improved to a 112.6, but he's not improving right now as he's taking a little trip to the Daisy Field. And instead, he's gone back to the pits, I think, and he might be cooling off or just getting ready to do one final lap. But we've got Plucks going around right now, and he will have one more lap. Oh, well, he's going to have 2 more laps after this one if he's timed it absolutely perfectly. And we're just going to keep eyes on whether he improves as he comes across the line here. And it's going to be marginal whether he's going to get 1 more lap. He is very close. I think he's just going to creep in 1 more lap. Yet he's going to be able, a 111.9 from Plucks, so that's an improvement, but not up into P2. And he's going to have 2 more laps to go if he absolutely hounds this next lap. He goes wide there, so that may have scuppered the lap. We'll wait and find out, of course, but we'll move away from Plucks briefly, and we're going to come over to Bottle Job. Will Bottle Job be improving this time around, or is he going to go for 1 more crack of the lap and see if he can get himself onto the second or even the first row of the grid, currently sitting at the front of the 3rd row? It's going to be close, of course, as Bottle Job is hanging all the way to the right, and he improves to a 112.2 with now 75 thousandths between himself and Jaggernaut, and we're wondering if Jaggernaut is going to improve in return. We've got a number of drivers now in the pits as well as they've come off of the qualifying session. I don't think they feel they can improve. Zefix's Jack is one of them. He's currently sitting in the pits. And Jaggernaut, I think, here is going to get 1 more lap in, and I think he's going to try and hang in the rear slipstream of Gadget as Berkey Baby improves to 112.3, which moves him up to P7. And Jaggernaut, you can see he's staying in the slip, distant slip of Gadget right now, and I think he is hoping that he's able to close up on Gadget on this final qualifying lap and try to get 1 massive lap here at the end, as we've got yellow flags going through turn number 2. A driver has had an off, but as drivers are now starting to come across the line then to complete their qualifying sessions, we're just going to take a look through, and we can see that the first of our drivers to come across the line to complete their qualifying session currently on a hot lap would be Muller CJ, currently P10. Will Muller be able to improve as he comes across the line here? And the question will be answered as a no. Muller does not improve, so that is his qualifying session over, I believe, unless he's going to have 1 more lap. We just had another driver come across the start-finish line as well, as Alex has had a disaster at turn 12, so Alex's qualifying aspirations are over. Plucks getting it very wrong as well. They're coming out of turn number 5. I think Plucks has come off a lap, as has Jaggernaut, and we can see more drivers. Bottle Job comes through and does not improve, and Rice also came through that. I think Rice was hoping to improve, but did not improve in the end. Or was he in the pits? We're not 100% sure. Flapjack currently on a bit of a burning lap as well in terms of trying to get an improvement, and we can see that Jaggernaut is on the charge as well. Now both of these drivers will be coming across the line shortly. We're going to stay with Flapjack because we'll have both drivers in the camera shot by following it with the rear driver of this pair, and you can see how he's getting a much smoother line due to the aerodynamics of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive of his Honda compared to the front-engine rear-wheel drive of the GTR from 2008, which lacks the aerodynamics as well. And Flapjack's going to be the one to gain here as they come across to complete the lap. And does he improve? No, he does not improve. I believe then we're just going to have a couple of drivers come out onto track, but those are your final standings, ladies and gentlemen. So of course on the left hand side will be your odd number drivers in terms of positions, the evens on the right, and in the rundown to turn number 1 you're going to want to be on what is the right hand side from the driver's perspective. So Jack has got the commanding position. Can he convert his pole position into a good start and run away with the race, or will Alex or Plucks be able to contest? And with 5 red lights, it is lights out and away they go, and Jack immediately having a poor start, but the driver who's had a phenomenal start as would be expected by that aspiration is Jaggernaut with the 2008 Nissan charging away and immediately up into the lead. We've got 4 wide and now 3 wide behind them coming into turn number 1, but all of our drivers seeming to make it through relatively safely and all settling into an order. But there has been some huge gains already, as we can see Berkey Baby is battling into turn 2 with G Rabbit, and Awesome Alex is trying to hound Jaggernaut for the lead as Gadget goes a little bit through the natural racing line there, and G-Rabbit tries to get alongside as they come through 4 and down into 5 now, and Berkey all over the back of G-Rabbit. But up front we can see that Jaggernaut, as they all form into a line, although Senna's gone wide out of turn 5 and has had to lift off a little bit, we saw in the rear of the camera shot, we can see that Alex is applying a huge amount of pressure to Jaggernaut right now as they're coming up into turn number 8 for the first time of asking, and Alex is trying to essentially force Jaggernaut to make an error early on. Because he'll probably feel that if he can't get an error, as Jaggernaut does go actually quite deep there on 9, trying to get those tyres warmed up, and looking further back, there's been a little bit of change. We can see that Gadget has actually lost a place to G-Rabbit. We're going to see what happened in a second, but G-Rabbit has has gained over Gadget as they're coming out of the final corner then, and it is after 1 lap in this 1 hour endurance race. Jaggernaut leading from Awesome Alex in P2, and there is Plux the Duck in P3, Zephyx is Jack in P4. We're just going to switch back to Jaggernaut and Awesome Alex because they're going side by side into turn 1, and it looks like Alex is going to have the inside line, but he's had to back out of it on braking. But it does mean that Jaggernaut's gone wide, and Alex has carried a good amount of momentum through. Now will he have the run? And he's got the run into turn number 2, and Plux is coming through with him, and Jack is trying to come through as well. It's trying to be a 3-for-1 special, and it's worked out. Jaggernaut is having to resettle the car, and now Bottle Job is jumping onto the back of this train, currently running in P5. Behind them we can see that Flapjack is in P6 at this point in time, getting it all sorts of wrong out of turn 5 there, and I think G-Rabbit's going to want a punt at the rear of Flapjack's car at this point, as he's got the momentum, he's got the overspeed going up the hill into 7. Now as they come up into the carousel at 8, will Flapjack go to the inside with a quick lunge? I think he is, but will G-Rabbit be able to hold it around the outside? Because that Lexus has a very stable rear end, and it does have a good amount of natural grip to it if you're able to get it right, and it looks as though G-Rabbit has gotten the move done round the outside there for P6. Well done to G-Rabbit. Meanwhile further down we can see Berkey Baby is applying some pressure to the rear of Gadget right now, and I'm hearing, ladies and gentlemen, that further up Alex is starting to pull a little bit away from the chasing pack of Plux the Duck, Jack, Jaggernaut and Bottle Job, but we'll keep an eye on them as they move around. But right now Berkey Baby on a charge for that P8, and we're actually going to switch to the onboard of Berkey Baby, as we can see that Muller, CJ, Rice and Sean and Senna are not really changing positions right now, bringing the field up from behind. But as we switch to the onboard then, riding within the cockpit of Berkey Baby right now, you can see he's having to work very hard here to chase after, and up front of him we have got Flapjack, who's had a bit of an incident. He's dropped down to P7 in fact, as Berkey Baby goes wide and gets it all sorts of wrong and just catches it in time. Oh goodness me, well caught by that man, but that was a near disaster there for Berkey Baby coming out of 2. He just went too deep out the corner exit and went onto the grass, and the 2 left-hand wheels decided to have a little picnic, and we can see that G-Rabbit has moved up. But what happened to Flapjack there? We're just about to wind back and find out for you. So Flapjack had got it wrong already, and I think what it was, G-Rabbit had just had the run on him into turn number 1. It was just a natural overtake down the straight into turn 1. So no major surprises there, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of how it happened. It was just where it happened and so early on. And you can see that G-Rabbit is pulling away from Flapjack right now. The NSX driver not really feeling that strong at this point in the race, as they're all coming through the final sector once again to complete lap number 3. Now up front, meanwhile, we can see that Alex is still holding on to 6/10 ahead of Plux the Duck as they all come charging down towards turn number 1 for the 4th time of asking, and Plux is not gaining enough right now to go for a move or try to put the intimidation on Awesome Alex, and he's got to be wary of the fact that he's got Jet behind him. But look who's putting the pressure on. You can see that the 2016 GTR of Bottle Job has a lot more natural grip, and Bottle Job can throw the car through turn number 1 and 2, whereas Jaggernaut right now really is becoming the cork in the bottle and holding Bottle Job up and chasing after the podium slots. It looks as though Jaggernaut just does not have the momentum on his side right now compared to Bottle Job, and Bottle Job's going to have to try and find a way past, and we'll keep our eyes on that delta in terms of if there was a move being affected. As meanwhile, rear of your screen, we can see Berkey Baby running P9, still no move on Gadget. We're expecting one in the near future potentially, whereas we have got DJ Rice 83 chasing after Muller right now, getting quite close, and Mr. Sean and Ayrton Senna battling for P12 a little bit back, 1.6 seconds back. But meanwhile, and looking back up front, we can see that Bottle Job has fallen off, but look how close Plux is now to the rear of Alex's car, and I get the feeling a move could be on any second at this point, because Plux is getting closer and closer, and if he's going to do it now, it's got to be in the run down to turn 1 surely, because he's been closer than he ever has been before. And you'll see that in the slipstream, what with those super soft tyres already being a bit worn and some fuel coming out the car, he's going to hit approximately 174 by the end of the straight. And he's going to look to the inside here for the little kink, but to the outside, and he's backed out of it. He's thought already of it. And hold on, we see that there is a 3-second penalty for Jaggernaut for running wide of track limits. And I think there was contact between Jaggernaut and Bottle Job there, because there was a massive incident and Bottle Job went off, and Jaggernaut is immediately returned with a significant amount of damage. We're going to wind back and see what happens shortly, ladies and gentlemen, but what we can see right now is that somebody has dropped well away from the field as G-Rabbit is battling, and I think that Jaggernaut here with the damage is just falling backwards, and Gadget goes around the outside of the Frenchman through 5, and Jaggernaut is just having to take emergency manoeuvres to get out of the way. I think he knows he can't really fight these drivers, and they're all charging out, and we can see that Flapjack has actually dropped quite a way off. What happened to Flapjack, we will find out very shortly for you, but the key thing is that we can see that Jaggernaut right now struggling. He's going to have to get this car home to the pits because it has got severe damage, and it means he's dropping all of these places. Everybody's getting past. He's now dropped to P9, and Muller CJ meanwhile is the next one on the list to pick up the place, and he'll have to try and get past Jaggernaut as soon as possible out of 12, because otherwise the Frenchman is going to be holding up and costing him the ability to run after the drivers ahead of him. And we can see, hold on a second, we can see that Awesome Alex has actually dropped back significantly. Now, was there a mistake from Awesome Alex? And we're going to find out what happened to Jaggernaut first, as we see that he is in the pits right now, and we're going to flick back and take a look on the replay camera for you. And it looks as though, so he definitely did run wide out of turn 12, and that's why he's got the 2.5 second penalty. Now into turn number 1, he just seemed to experience a huge amount of snap oversteer. Unfortunately, his car ghosted, and Bottlejob thought that he was going to be in the contact and tried to take some emergency action. And meanwhile, Alex has been passed for P2 by Jack right now, and indeed Plux has got passed as well. And I think given the gap between Alex and the other two drivers, there was probably a mistake by Awesome Alex there, because he's so far back right now that wouldn't indicate that it was just simple overtakes. It would indicate a mistake, but that means that Awesome Alex has dropped down the field, and now in return it's up to Plux and Jack to pull away from Alex as they charge off in the contention and the battle for the race win. But further back, Bottlejob 4 seconds behind. Now that he has cleared Jaggernaut, he'll be happy about that, but what he will not be happy about, of course, is the fact that it's taken him so long and that he's coming to the end of his first stint. Now, it's a good point here that we start to hold on a second. We're not going to talk about that because we're going to see that G-Rabbit is being attacked by Flapjack, and he's having a bit of difficulty right now. And in terms of how the cars weigh up, we know that the Lexus is quite harsh on its tyres. If the driver does not trail brake or moves the brake bias towards the front, it can really hit the rears, and immediately G-Rabbit is into the pits after 6 laps. And that is quite an early stop for the Finnish driver there. By comparison with what we've seen from other drivers, we're expecting a good number of our drivers to go for the 7-lap stints all the way through to the 9-lap stints, depending on their car and how they feel comfortable on it. But really, the pit stop here is 8 seconds for a pit stop if you include the tyre change, and if you add fuel into mix, well, you're looking upwards of, say, 12 to 15 seconds for a pit stop there. But what we are seeing is that some of our Lexus drivers are experiencing some difficulty. Speaking of difficulty, Berkey Baby goes wide out of 5 there. Some of the tyre wear now kicking in on Berkey's car, and again, it's those left-hand tyres which are just starting to fall off a bit. But of course, the thing is as well, if the drivers can manage their tyres here, they can go very deep. And the drivers who will be in the worst possible situation in terms of managing the tyres to the best of their ability will be the NSX drivers, because they know as soon as those rears are gone, the rear end is going to become very unstable. Whereas with the Lexus, of course, you lose the stability when the tyres have gone, but you know it's coming in the Lexus. Whereas the NSX, it literally feels like a cliff and they're gone. And the GTR's probably got the best balance in terms of that tyre wear. Now, meanwhile, on the straight, we can see that Plux has pulled a 7/10 per second lead over Jack, and meanwhile into the pits comes Sir Bottlejob running P4, and this is going to be his first stop, and I think he might have gone a little bit early here just to try and undercut some of the other drivers around him. Now, where will this bring him out? Of course, it'll bring him out in approximately, oh no, that is not good for Bottlejob. He has come out into an absolute plethora of traffic, as we can see that Muller CJ has run wide and picked up a significant penalty out the final corner, and he's going to need to burn that. And Mr. Sean right now to the outside of Bottlejob through turn 2, and I think Sean realises here he can't fight Bottlejob even though he's on the softs, and Sean going for an interesting strategy to run the softs here, because those will cost about a second in terms of the overall lap time. Well, about 8 tenths to a second from what we estimate compared to the super soft. And I think Bottle now really needs to put the hammer down, and he'll be thinking to himself that he's got everything to do because of the fact he's come out in so much traffic, and he'll be hoping with lap 8 coming up, this is typically where the drivers are expected to pit if they're running the super softs. If they're running softs, they could go 10 laps, but the fall off the cliff for the soft tyres is actually heavier, as Bottlejob is definitely battling with Muller right now, and Muller right in the build of that penalty, and Bottlejob being caught out there as Muller was trying to burn the penalty and having to take a slight emergency action in skidding across the curb on 9 as Plux the Duck comes into the pits on the race lead, and behind him so does Awesome Alex. Both drivers on similar amounts of fuel, and that means that for the first time in this race, Jack from Team FX Motorsport is leading the race, as all of our drivers are starting to peel into the pits. But one driver who who is not, and I think we're going to get a move on that driver shortly, will be Muller CJ, as we can see that Bottle Job is now going to the left-hand side. All of our drivers have to be wary, of course, of the pit exit line, and Bottle Job has gone for it here. Muller has overextended into the corner there. I think he's been caught out by how much speed he was carrying and how close he was to the back of Muller's car, and that's a disaster. Hold on a second, it's all kicking off behind. What on earth happened there as Berkey Baby has had an absolute incident? We're just going to wind back, ladies and gentlemen, and find out what happened there, because that was a disaster. Now, they were in a three-way train. It turned into, I think, a bit of a four-way fight into turn number one, and you can see Flapjack was on the left. Berkey carried a huge amount of momentum, and as he was coming through the corner here, he tried to carry his back, and Muller, where he'd gone off and rejoined, and then Senna and Berkey both got caught up in that incident. So it seems as though they were both caught out by Muller's unsafe rejoin in their eyes, and I think that's one that's going to be going to the stewards after this race, because they'll be a bit angry as Berkey has dropped all the way down to P11 right now, but he has all that damage, and the fact he was on a fresh set of tyres as well, he's going to pit soon, because that damage has cost him a huge amount of time, and it's the same with Muller as well. Now, coming into the pits right now is Zephyx's Jack. We're just going to take a quick look at Muller's car here. As you can see that his lap times are not going too well at the moment, and he has picked up huge damage to the car from the incident. But up front we can see that Plux has returned to the lead, so using that undercut there, and actually it has worked out well for Plux. Look at the gap he's opened up on Jack. He's gained approximately half a second through making the earlier stop, but of course it may be Jack's aspiration to do longer stints, say 9-lap stints, compared to Plux, who seems to be doing approximately 8-lap stints. And what that will mean is, of course, Jack may have to do one less pit stop, or he can be more aggressive with his pit stop strategy towards the end of the race, whereas Plux will now have that time disadvantage because he knows he has to theoretically stop earlier in his mind, and he'll be trying to work out mentally how to work around that. Now, one driver who's still running out on circuit and has not pitted yet, with all the chaos going on around him, is Mr. Sean. Now, remember last time out in Red Bull Ring, him and Muller CJ were the drivers who just seemed to never stop running. They were the latest of our stoppers. Well, some of the latest, albeit it was Jaggernaut, who I think was the latest stopper for the first stint in Red Bull Ring. But Mr. Sean here, putting in a very long stint on those soft tyres and some consistent laps. Let's take a look at his last lap. It was a 1:15.3, so somewhat off the running pace at the moment of those high 1:12s, the fastest lap being that 1:12.9. So our drivers are looking at those low 1:13s, but you can imagine that Sean right now will feel pretty happy with himself, and behind him he has got the highly capable Brit of Gadget, who is also running around, but Gadget has had the pit stop, to be fair, so you can expect that Gadget is going to go for a move here surely, and I don't think Sean's going to want to defend against this too hard, as we do have a driver who's come out the pits recently. We'll find out who that is shortly with the blue flags, but Sean just keeping himself in there for long enough to make Gadget think twice, but in the end Gadget is past, and now Awesome Alex will be on the list of drivers trying to make their way past Sean, and Sean immediately staying to the left hand side through turn 2. This is smart driving from Sean, because he knows he's in a different race, his strategy is different, and he shouldn't cost himself time by battling here, because he'll regain that time towards the end of the race if his strategy works out, of course. Now, one of the drivers who's on a recovery drive right now is Jaggernaut, of course, having had that brilliant start down in P7 right now. The Frenchman is all go go go, held bells here, and he'll be the next one to go after Mr. Sean, with the gap between the two drivers right now being in the approximate region of 9.5 tenths, and behind him he's got G-Rabbit chasing after him, the Finnish driver, Fast and Furious, a second down the road. Now, as we look around towards the rear of our pack, of course, because we do have a grand total of 13 drivers running around on circuit right now, we can see that Flapjack in a bit of a no man's land in terms of P10, 7 seconds down on Rice in P9, and 1.6 seconds ahead of Berkey Baby in P11, who of course had to make that emergency pit stop due to the damage he received. These drivers all right now having a very quiet race, and Muller right at the back, the one who received the greatest damage for the incident in turn 1, and of course that set off the chain reaction of events by the looks of things. So Muller right now having to do the mega of all recovery drives, but up front we can see that Plux is starting to be reeled in a little bit by Jack here. That gap has come down by the region of 4 tenths over the last couple of laps, but I think it might be that Plux is also just simply turning the wick down a little bit here and thinking to himself, if he can manage his pace versus Jack, then Jack will have to work harder to close the gap up. And this is a good opportunity for Plux. And this is the thing, when you're in these scenarios where you're the lead driver in a battle and you've got a little bit of a gap to play with, you don't want to necessarily push 100%, because otherwise if you're pushing 100%, then you're wearing yourself out. As we look further down the field, and we can see that Sean is now on the hit list for G-Rabbit here. Jaggernaut, of course, got past him earlier, and G-Rabbit goes to the inside, and Sean obliges. And again, you can see here that the British driver running in the Lexus is being very smart with his positioning, just simply letting people through, because he knows at the end of the day, by going deep here, he can give himself a strategic advantage later on in the race, so long as he doesn't lose too much time and letting people through and doesn't battle. And I reckon, given the fact that the left-hand tyres of Sean's car right now well balanced, so you can imagine that Sean is running probably 2 to the front in terms of his brake balance here because of how well balanced the tyre wear is across the fronts and the rears. He'll be coming in any second, and right on call, here he comes, and that is going to put Sean quite the way down the order. But of course, Sean in return will have the knowledge that he doesn't have to do as many stops compared to the other drivers, and he's keeping himself out of the madness and the action as he rejoins the field in what is going to be approximately P number 11. Now Jaganat's coming through here in P5, currently coming through turn number 4 and trying to hunt down all some Alex. The gap between these two drivers being at 3 seconds. Not much happening right now in terms of the battle for P4 or P3. Everybody's open as Jaganat gets a little skill iffy with the rear end coming out of turn number 5. It's quite easy to do, particularly once the fuel starts to drain out the car. You've got less weight in the rear of the car, and you normally use that fuel. I'll tell you from experience, you'll use that fuel to stabilise the car and be more aggressive on the power coming out of turn 5 here, because it is a downhill apex and it is one of those corners that essentially throws you out onto the circuit once you leave the apex of the corner. And you can see that Sean has come out in P10, and in return what it means is he's now chasing after Berkey Baby. Now the question of course will be, has Sean decided to go for another set of softs? He has indeed, and as we ride on board with Sean here, you can see that he is essentially trying to hunt Berkey Baby down and get past the GTR driver, who is in a different race and in one of those unfortunate races where he's got a lot of recovery work to do because of the damage he picked up earlier on. But in return he will want to try and hold Sean up, because he'll probably feel that he's in contention for battling with Sean, and Sean had quite a poor exit there out of turn 12, it should be noted, and Berkey Baby pulling away massively as a result, as G-Rabbit comes into the pits then, going on to a set of super softs here. Now let's take a look at where that puts him. That's going to bring him out right off of people in terms of battling for P9 and 10, so he's just come out ahead of that battle. That'd be good for him. And I think we've got one driver right now who is parked at the end of the start finish straight, and we're just going to check what's happened here. It's Muller CJ, and I think he's just trying to stay out the way. He feels at this point in time that it's one of those races where he is out of contention for picking up positions through battling, and he's just going to come home and finish the race, because he's let a lot of people through by staying on the inside of the circuit there. Well, of course, we'll wait and find out. But up front right now, we can see that Jack is still getting closer and closer to the rear of the NSX in front of him, and he's now in that slipstream zone. So you will see that time start to come down, or the question may be, as we jump to the onboard telemetry, will Jack be doing a bit of fuel saving, knowing he has got the slipstream zone of Plux in his favour now, and just simply eking out a little bit of extra mileage with the fuel tank, so that way it's to spend less time in the pits when it matters, and everybody starts to go for those all-important fuel stops. But coming through here, through turn number 3 and 4, he'll just balance the car down into third gear, and you can see he's not using second gear through turn 4's apex there, and that would be a sign that he may be doing a little bit of fuel saving car management here, as he is getting closer and closer to Plux, and by upshifting he's going to rev it out into third gear. So I think he's revving out in the earlier gears and just doing the fuel saving right towards the top end. He's trying to stay with Plux as long as possible, and then when he gets on that straight, that's when he'll do the fuel saving, or he'll go for a move, because Plux actually seems to be falling back a little bit into his clutches once again. But we have seen this once before, and it could be that Plux as well is trying to make a bit of an effort in order to try and conserve the car right now. We can see that Sean is still behind Berkey Baby, and Berkey Baby in return chasing after G-Rabbit. With G-Rabbit now being on those fresh super softs, I would expect that the Finnish driver is going to pull away from the two Brits here and simply try to run away with this at this point in the race distance. Up ahead of these guys, we can see, hold on a second, has there been a move for P4 by Rice, or has Rice just been going for this long on those super softs? Because he's being battled by awesome Alex right now, and Alex goes to the inside coming out of 9 and coming into 10. I think Alex will got the move done, as Rice has just literally appeared in P5 of all places. We haven't really seen where that's come from. I think Rice has just gone really deep on strategy, ladies and gentlemen, because he's just crept up and up and up, and he's up into P5, and we can see, hold on a second, I'm hearing, no, my apologies, I'm looking at the wrong drivers there. I was looking on the track map there. I thought there was a battle for P1 going into the first corner. We can see that P1 and P2 are coming through turn number 5 right now as Flapjack comes into the pits. But Rice really surprising everyone by being this far ahead of the field and so deep into the race, so 20 minutes in. But Jaganat is coming after him right now. I think Rice has just decided to go as long as possible on a set of super softs, because those super softs are quite heavily worn, but he's doing very well on those tyres. And meanwhile up front we can see that Plux is definitely being hounded now by Jack, and in fact Jack is getting closer and closer, and as we stick to the rear of Plux's car, and we can see that he's charging for 11 here and coming up into 12 for the 16th time. We're wondering whether Jack is going to go for the move. That gap has opened up a bit, and I think Jack is struggling to follow the Honda in his GTR through turns 10 and 11. The GTR just not having that balance in terms of being able to turn in, but it means Plux is now into the pits. Now this I would suspect is a scheduled stop for Plux, going a bit longer this time in terms of stint, and this releases Jack again, of course, but in terms of how they're going to play out, we'll find out shortly. But Jaggernaut has managed to get past Rice, and we're just going to see what happened there in terms of getting past. So I think it happened up into 9. That's where you'd normally make an overtake. Rice going to the right hand side, Jaggernaut staying to the left hand side here, and you can see that Jaggernaut just went round the outside into the braking zone and got the move done. Well driven by the Frenchman there. As we can see that Rice is coming to the pits, and now that Rice is into the pits, it's going to drop him quite far back as he drops down to, I think, what's going to be approximately P8 as he starts to come out the pits here. But Rice will have gained significantly. In fact, no, Rice is out in P8. My apologies, we were correct in our estimation there. As we see, Sean has come through to P7 right now. And again, the question will be, hold on a second, what has happened to Rice here? This is a bit of a disaster. I think he's binned it into the wall coming out onto turn number 1. So he's just in the pit, and he's come out the pits, and as he just simply forgotten his braking point coming out pits, yep, he's carried too much momentum and gone into the wall. That is a disaster for Rice, and now he's got it all to do once again, and he's going to have to charge after the pack that he was going to come out ahead of, as now he's dropped all the way down to P12, and he's got Gadget, Berkey Baby and Senna to pass. And again, the question is, with Jack into the pits, will he come out in front of Plux the Dart, or will Plux the Dart have done enough once again to come back out in front? And you can see Plux has done it once again here, and in fact it is a similar form in the fact that Plux has come out with the undercut 1.6 seconds ahead of Jack, so he has gained once more approximately a second over his main rival for the race win. But in turn, it's going to be that trade-off in strategy, which we will keep an eye on, because Plux seems to be just offsetting himself enough to get a nice undercut on Jack, and Jack will respond to that. We know that Jack does work out his strategies on the fly, and he can respond very rapidly and change things up and throw a spanner in the works for the drivers around him. But in terms of moves that are upcoming, I think we're going to have Rice trying to make a move here on Gadget as they're coming charging down to turn 1 on lap number 18. He's gone to the inside, which will be the outside for the corner, and you can see that he's done it under braking. Now, will he hold it? He's just about held it, but Gadget is there behind him, and I think he's got the move done. That was a very nice manoeuvre by Rice in the 2016 GTR, and he's up into P11, now hunting down Senna and Berkey Baby, who are literally just 2 seconds up the road in total, with Senna being half a second and then Berkey being a further 1 to 1.5 seconds. No further action happening further up the field right now. We seem to have this massive battle for P10 ongoing through the misfortunes of some drivers and other drivers trying to gain, not being on the optimum pace here. But what you can see, riding back from Senna's car at this point, the fail-safe mobile, the Lexus, he's gone very wide. In fact, he's gone too wide out of 8, and that means that Rice is just going to simply gain the place without having to actually battle for it. So I think Rice will be brewing a sigh of relief there and thinking to himself, well, thank goodness for that. I won't have to do the hard work. Thank you, Senna. Meanwhile, behind these two, of course, you've got Gadget. And I think Gadget here is starting to hit the cliff in terms of his tyres performance, because he is dropping off of P10 and P11, and I think we could be expecting a pit stop from Gadget any moment now, in all honesty. And the optimum strategy has been to go for approximately 8 laps on a set of superstocks as Senna comes into the pits here, and I think Senna knows that his tyres are up as well, would have been running off at turn 8, and Muller is getting closer and closer, but I don't think he's going to have the move affected here in the fact that he's too far back from Gadget, as we can see that Muller is still being shown on our time screen. That would explain, because Muller is a lap down on everyone. My apologies for that mistake. Muller is a lap down on everyone, and now racing to get himself unlapped, oddly enough, but it's neither here nor neither, as we can see that Flapjack is chasing after Mr. Sean. Now, Mr. Sean, of course, being on those soft tyres, will be losing time to the guys on the super softs, but remember, Sean is in a very different strategic race compared to everyone around him. He's trying to turn this race into what I would argue is likely to be a 3-stop or a 4-stop, compared to everybody else who's probably going for the 5-stop, pitting every 10 minutes or so on a set of super softs. So that will be the trade-off there, where he's going to have to spend one less stop, but in return, of course, he's going to be losing time every single lap, and it's a gamble where we'll have to find out if it pays off. Now, looking further around on our track radar, we're just going to take a quick sip of water as we stay with Flapjack. I think he may be going for the move at the end of the straight. And Flapjack is getting closer and closer here, and I think there is going to be a move on under the braking, although it's going to be very late if he's going to go for it. And no, he has not affected the move. He's too far back for it. Thinking about it for another day, but he will gain here as he comes through turn 2 in particular, because the super soft tyre just gives him that natural grip through 2 compared to the soft, and also the fact that he is driving the car which will be the strongest on that pace because of its mid-engine rear-wheel drive mounting. It means he will have the better rotation and apex speed through 2, or at least we'd assume that if it was equal drivers in the same car. But he's gaining more and more every corner on Sean, and there's going to be a move any second now, and I think he is sizing Sean up here. He's going to try and hang around the outside into 7 and then up into 8. He'll be on the inside naturally, and he's got it done on the brakes. You've just got to simply hold it to the inside, run off the curb there, stretch it out in 3rd gear, and unless Sean responds, and I think side by side here, Sean is responding and trying to hold to the inside, so he thinks his main competitor at this point in the race is Flapjack, and they're going to go side by side into 10 and 11, but Sean backs out because he knows he will not be able to hold a tight line through 11 if he stays that tight through 10, and that means Flapjack is now up into P7. But good battling by Sean then, knowing when to fight and when not to fight, and choosing to fight. I think that caught Flapjack by surprise a bit there. He's perhaps expecting Sean to just simply back out of it and relax, but Sean has shown a little bit of fighting spirit there, as Berkey Baby is 2.6 seconds down the road from Sean and gaining very gradually. Now looking further afield, back at our leaders, it's a 1.3 second gap between Plux and Jack. No change there. It's actually opened up to 1.6 seconds. It's opened up quite a bit, in fact, and now Jack's closing it back up. So I think it's just simply their natural lines through the different corners. That's what's causing the gap to vary. But it's stabilised at about 1.6 to 1.5 seconds. So no overall change. And then we looked at Sir Bottlejob, who is 12.3 seconds down on our race leaders right now. But in return, he's got a nice comfortable space of 7.2 seconds ahead of Awesome Alex here, who is coming around in P4 right now. And Alex will be very happy with this result, I'm sure. He just needs to bring it home in his battle for the relegation zone, trying to stay out of it. And Jaggernaut in P5 closing very gradually on Alex, now 2.2 seconds the gap. And you can see that Jaggernaut is being very aggressive on the inside braking into turn 12, essentially trying to get the rear of the car to swing round. Even though it's a front engine rear-wheel drive car, you could see the rear end was jutting out, and I believe he will have some tyre wear, but he was just trying to get the car to throw itself through the corner as Alex pits. And now it's time for Jaggernaut to put in the mother of all laps to essentially try and gain on Alex through this chain of pit stops, because we can expect that Jaggernaut will be pitting in 1 to 2 laps. Now looking further afield, I think we have got a bit of a battle for P11 brewing here, and it's Senna versus Gadget, and you can see that Gadget is getting closer and closer, and Senna going very wide out of 12, just getting it wrong on braking there and going deep out the corner, and he's got a bit of tyre wear there, but Gadget I think is going to be going for the move on Senna as they charge down towards turn number 1 on lap 22. Gadget looking to the outside effectively of turn 1, and he will want to get it done on the brakes and hope that Senna backs out of it, and Senna does back out of it. He knows that the move's going to be made, and it'll be carnage if they both try and stay side by side through 1, and Gadget moving up into P11. But these are the closest two on track at this point in time, and things have spaced out a little bit in terms of where our drivers are on track past Senna and Gadget right now, ladies and gentlemen. But it's natural at a circuit like this where it's fast and frantic in terms of lap times, and there's all sorts of strategies going on. We see a whole plethora of strategies here. It will start to come back together as we move into the second half of the race. And speaking of it coming together, Bottlejob is now in the pits, and let's see what his team get up to here. Is it just going to be simply a tyre change here? And it is indeed a tyre change. Now this will put him just out ahead of Jaggernaut, we believe. He'll just be ahead of the Frenchman, and this is critical for Bottlejob, because what it means is that Jaggernaut completes another lap is that effectively he will now have the free run, and Jaggernaut will of course want to try and get ahead of Bottlejob or stay as close to Bottlejob for at least one more lap so you can get the distant toe off of Bottlejob's car. But you're going to see that gap, I suspect, open up very quickly beyond 8 tenths within the first half of a lap. It's 7 tenths at the moment, and Bottlejob just needs to nail turn number 5 here and get a good run. And there it goes, ladies and gentlemen. The gap has opened up to an excess of 8 tenths, and Jaggernaut is now out of the slipstream zone, and Reliant Bottle making a mistake in order to fall back into the clutches. And we can see that Mr. Sean here, currently in P7, Berkey Baby is getting closer and closer as we switch to Berkey Baby's car here, and we look forward on his car. And you can see as we switch to the telemetry board that he's starting to come to end of his set of super softs here. But Sean, of course, going on those soft tyres, and we can suspect, if our expectation is that Sean is doing a stop every 15 minutes on a set of softs, that both of these drivers are probably going to pit within the next lap or two. And you can see that Berkey is getting closer and closer, and look how deep he is in terms of entry into the corner before he breaks through turn 9. And I think there's going to be a move on into the final corner. If he's able to nail his rotation through 11, he might try and go for the lunge into 12. Alternatively, just size up Sean under braking out of 12 and in the run to turn 1. Sean going very wide there, and I think there's going to be the move as they go side by side coming down the straight. Then will Sean pit, as Jaggernaut is going to be coming out of the pits very shortly, and we'll see where he's positioned. And we can see that Berkey has already got ahead, and I don't think Sean's going to make a comeback. Although never say never, as Berkey comes into the corner then, gets the braking point absolutely nailed, and Sean goes a little bit deep, but he's staying well in that slipstream zone, and Sean here is the one to watch out for in terms of the battle for the midfield. Now, we did see a pit stop from Jaggernaut whilst all that was going on, and what I can report to you is that Jaggernaut has come out behind Awesome Alex once again, and he is ahead of Flapjack at this point. So these two right now on those very different strategies, and we've got a whole mix, and in fact both of our race leaders now into the pits, and we can see Plux has used 2% or 2 litres more fuel than Zefix's Jack, and Plux not taking the fuel on here. Now, is Jack taking on fuel? Jack has taken on a small amount of fuel here. Now this is important because what it will mean is when Jack comes in again, and I think Jack may have to do another small fuel stop to get to the end, Plux is going to have to take a lot more fuel on in the pits. So it's all to play for between these two, but you can see that fuel has caused the gap to open up to 2.6 seconds, and now Jack will need to put in every lap as if it's a qualifying lap to close up, and Plux will essentially want to put in a qualifying stint here to offset the fact that Jack has taken on the fuel and Plux needs to do so. As Flapjack comes into the pits from P number 6, and on the start-finish straight right now we can see that G-Rabbit's coming through. Sean has pitted from what was at the time P7, I think, so that's opened up the door for G-Rabbit to come through, and we can see Flapjack has come out in P8. Rice is into the pits in P9. He was in P9, he's dropped down to I think what is going to be P11 because Sean has come out in P9 and Gadget is behind him in P10, and Rice taking on the fuel right now and coming out in what is P12. So it's all chop and change in terms of the pit stops right now. Rice being one of those who's been surprising us in coming through the field, but I think Rice, now that momentum has been curbed a little bit, and we'll have to wait and see how he moves up through the strategy, as we've got a blue flag being waved for Muller CJ, who's a lap down on all of our drivers at the moment, and Muller right now just simply using this as a testing lap and also to show off to the sponsors. Senna coming through then to complete the middle sector, well, definitely to complete the middle sector I should say, and coming up the hill into turn number 8. And we can see that he is gaining on Gadget very gradually at this point, having made a pit stop. Gadget having made the pit stop, and Senna going as long as possible on a set of super softs and drifting through, braking into turn number 9 there. Bit of a difficult one there. I think Senna's going to be due a stop any second now, to be honest, because those tyres are well past their prime, and whilst they will still offer him some grip, you can imagine that he's starting to feel as though the tyres are just not going to give him the confidence, and I suspect that there will be a pit stop at the end of this lap, if not one more lap. As Senna is about to come down, will he go into the pits? We duck to left. No, he's going one more lap, but he's fallen off of Gadget quite sizably through those little moments with the super soft tyres wearing away. Berkey Baby in P6 right now, and Berkey of course have not pitted for quite some time, those super softs coming away from their ideal situation, and G-Rabbit is getting closer and closer, and G-Rabbit of course being on a different strategy, G-Rabbit being on fresher super softs by comparison, albeit not that fresh, but he is gaining on the British driver ahead of him, and he's pulling away a little bit from Flapjack, and he'll be grateful for that distant tow out of Berkey Baby's car, giving him the space to do so, where Flapjack is trying to chase after these two and get himself into that slipstream zone. We'll see the battle close up here, and I think Berkey is going to be due a pit stop any moment now, because he's getting slower and slower coming out of the final sector in particular. He lost 4 tenths on G-Rabbit through turn number 9 alone, and you can see here G-Rabbit is getting closer and closer, really planted with that Lexus despite some of the tyre wear here, and you can see that G-Rabbit really knows his machinery and his craft in that car, and he's following Berkey Baby into the pits and almost went into the pits. We're trying to maximise the slipstream there, and I think what it is, he's that concerned that he's not able to maintain the pace down the straight into 1 compared to Flapjack. He wants to take every possible advantage to essentially get away from Flapjack before Flapjack gets into that slipstream. He thinks it's an eventuality as he tucks into turn 2 there and picks up a little bit of the curb, and that throws him around the corner. Now Berkey coming out the pits, he's come out in P11, and we can see that Rice has come out behind him in terms of the overall strategy situation. Berkey in that P11, Rice will want to try and get past him as soon as possible, and you can see that Rice is carrying a lot of momentum, but he hasn't been able to get past Berkey Baby. And up front, meanwhile, what we're hearing is that once again, hold on a second, what on earth has happened here? Jackie's ahead of Plux. Well, wherever it's happened, has there been some sort of incident and we haven't heard about it? Because Plux has dropped down significantly. Let's just find out, ladies and gentlemen, for you what has happened in terms of lap times. I think there was a major mistake by Plux, because we can see that Plux on lap 27 was a 1:15.9. Meanwhile, it looks as though Jack were 1:12.7. So I think Plux made a mistake, and it must have been saying turn 8 or turn 9, because Plux has had a disastrous lap 27, and that means now he's got to chase after Jack for that race win, or at least the lead at this point in time. Sorry we missed that off camera, but that was very sudden, and we did not expect that to be happening at all. We thought it would gradually close up, because we could see they were closing up on our radar, but for it to happen like that, goodness me, Plux has got a lot to do, and I think right now he's going to be thinking about how he can change his strategy to stay with Jack and undercut him through subsequent stops. Remember, of course, Plux is running a little bit less fuel than Jack, so now will Jack try to push the car hard, or will alternatively, as Plux almost runs beyond the limits there, and I'm wondering whether that's going to be a mini penalty applied. Doesn't look like it. It looks like Plux was just within the limit, but Jack is feeling that pressure as well, and I think Plux really will want to put the pressure on Jack and try and get Jack to burn as much fuel as possible in order to take away whatever advantage he's got, because Plux right now is looking very low on fuel because he didn't do the refuel, of course, whereas Jack has got that comfort zone. And we'll keep an eye on whether there's going to be a move being made, but we can see that Awesome Alex is now into the pits from P4. And I believe that means that Jaggernaut will come through to take P4 for the time being. And Alex now making his fuel stop with 25 minutes to go, or at least a small fuel stop. There'll probably be some more fuel there. And I think he wants to come out in the chase for Jaggernaut, so he doesn't lose track position to Jaggernaut. But up front, we can see that Plux is getting closer and closer in under braking into turn 8 on Jack. And Jack at this point can control the pace of these two if he so desires, because he does have the ace in his sleeve in terms of that extra fuel. But these are our closest two drivers on track as they're battling away, and we ride on board with the NSX driver here as he's coming through a turn number 10 and then into 11, and you can see he's closing up ever more. And under braking, he's just a little bit back, but will he plant it perfectly here, getting on the throttle? He does seem to have a little bit of oversteer there coming out of the final corner by comparison with Jack. But in coming down the straight now, he of course will gain as he's got the slipstream, he's got the tow, and both cars are similar in terms of top end speed, so he naturally picks up an advantage. And Jack taking a bit, hold on a second, did Jack make a mistake there? Because Jack seems to get it all sorts of wrong under braking into turn number 1. It looked as though he hung himself too wide into the corner, and well, Plux flashing his lights there. I think he'll feel as though that was a bit unnecessary and a near miss from the two drivers. I think Jack there just simply forgot to pull his car off of the right hand side of the circuit at that critical junction. I'm hearing there's been also a bit of a battle here between two of our drivers. We've got Rice and Berkey Baby battling, and Muller CJ in the mix of them as well. It looks as though it's all getting hammer and tongs between these guys. Of course, Muller is running one lap down, but Berkey was ahead of DJ Rice, so we assume there's been no change there in terms of positions. It's probably just the fact that they've lapped Muller once again, or Muller's trying to get himself back past, as Gadget has gone into the pits. He's currently in P9. He'll be putting on a fresh set of super softs, but will he come out in front of these guys, or will he come out behind them? We suspect he's probably going to take on a small amount of fuel, or the fuel to go to the end. He's taking on 10 litres of fuel, and that means he is going to be going a little bit longer compared to these guys, and probably that'll be enough fuel to get him very close to the end, but not quite all the way there. But meanwhile, in the battle for P1, we can see that Jack has opened up the gap a little bit, and Plux now charging into turn 1 by comparison with Jack. And I think Jack here is trying to control that pace, but he's got to be careful, because if he makes a mistake like what he did on the previous lap, well, Plux will try to seize on that, because that was very close, and too close for comfort if you ask me. But looking around, we can see that in terms of other positions, Bottlejob still in that very quiet P3, but pulling the gap out on Jaggernaut, the gap now up to 8.5 seconds. Jaggernaut, of course, in that war in terms of strategy between himself and Awesome Alex, who's 3.7 seconds down on the road. And Alex did hit a bit earlier, and that means that Alex is on the fresher tyres right now and is closing up on Jaggernaut. And Jaggernaut will need to think of a way to respond, and I think what Jaggernaut is going to try and do is essentially go long enough so he only needs to make one more stop, whereas Alex may need to make 2 stops by comparison, and that's how he'll overcome the charging British driver, who on paper right now is expected to be in P4 once this round of stops ends. But of course then we have to take the strategy into account and whether it's actually what Jaggernaut is trying to play to his advantage, as we can see here that Plux is not close enough, and in fact he's fallen out of the slipstream zone of Jack as he now comes into the pits. And of course this will give him the undercut, and we're looking around here and we're seeing on our timing screens that we've got two drivers who are very close together. And hold on a second, G-Rabbit and Flapjack battling here. Now, G-Rabbit was in P6 with all the strategy and the stops going on, but I think because he's extended so long and Flapjack has come out the pits on fresher tyres, he's just simply made the move into turn number 8 count. And G-Rabbit going very long here as Bottlejob also comes into the pits from P3 and takes on his fuel, probably to go to the end of the race now. And he'll want to try and come out ahead of Jaggernaut, who's just come through our picture, actually. Sorry, not our picture. Just come past our commentary box up at the end of the start-finish straight going into turn 1. And Bottlejob has come out behind both Jaggernaut and also Alex. And he'll be thinking to himself right now, okay, this isn't too much of a problem, because he'll know in his mind as G-Rabbit pits from P7 and this releases Flapjack in terms of any concerns about battling. And hold on a second, I'm hearing there has been an incident up at turn number 9. Now, let's just see who has had the incident here, folks. I think it's Muller CJ. Now, was it that he just simply hit the wall and exited the corner? So he already had a penalty for a cut somewhere. We're not sure where that happened. Coming through 9 then, does he just get overextend on exit? He's overextended and into the wall. He's the first one to fall victim to that in the race. That is unfortunate as Jack has come into the pits. Now this is important, because Flux will have taken on the fuel, but Jack will of course have less fuel to take on to go to the end. Where is this going to place Plux versus Jack? As Jack is already coming out the pit, so Plux is quite a way back on Jack here, and Plux is going to have to go hell for leather to get the win, with that gap being approximately 3.5 seconds as he comes through turn 1. And we can see that Jack, by taking that early fuel stop and the mistake that Plux made, it's meant that Jack has now taken a commanding position of this race. Meanwhile, in the battle for P3, well, really the battle for P4, we believe, Awesome Alex has come through and again past Jaggernaut through the pit stops, but we're wondering whether there's more pit stops to come for Awesome Alex than there are for Jaggernaut. As we can see that Flapjack also has come into the pits now, and this will be important in terms of his position versus G-Rabbit. Now he's going to take on the fuel. We've also got Mr. Sean in the picture who's coming through right now. Mr. Sean, remember, the sneaky driver on the softs here, who's just seemingly making the car go the distance, and Sean is back into P6. Now this is quite a surprise, and you can see that G-Rabbit has not come out ahead of Flapjack after the stops there. He's 3.5 seconds down, and he'll try to gain on Flapjack as soon as possible, but I think Flapjack will be focused on charging after Mr. Shaw. And with 20 minutes to go, well 19 minutes once the next 15 seconds pass, I think it's time for us to take a quick sip of water and wait to see what is going to happen as we get into the closing stages here, particularly that final quarter when it becomes the end of the pit stops and the strategy starts to be finalised and we really get to see who is going to be on the charge for a position at the end of the race. Now looking further around the field, what we can see is that Berkey Baby right now, currently sitting in P9, is not really gaining too rapidly on G-Rabbit at this point. And I think Berkey, whilst he has gained a little bit through 8 and 9, coming up into 10 and 11, his more worn tyres will affect him through here, and that's what you've seen before. And already he has actually dropped half a second as I say that. Commentator's curse applying to lap time as well, we believe. And we can see that Sean here is being attacked by Flapjack, and I think here this is going to be a very standard move from Flapjack. Although he's got to be careful because he's got to respect the fact that Sean is on a much more heavily worn and shod car. And in fact, Sean holding very heavily on the brakes there through 1 and Flapjack not able to get the move done. And now coming into turn 2, will Flapjack go for it? He's gone for it. And I think Sean tried to close the door there. And Sean will feel a little bit aggrieved by that. But there was no damage to his car nor to Flapjack's. I think it was perhaps just Sean not shutting the door early enough to sort of say to Flapjack, you're not going to get the move done there. And Flapjack went for the opportunity. And Sean will want to chase Flapjack down here. I don't think he would have been able to hold off Flapjack for much longer, but Flapjack will know that's cost him some time, as we do see one car seems to have retired from the field, and that is Muller CJ. We're just hearing that the car has been brought back into the pits. There seems to be a problem with the car and they're going to be retiring the car as a result. So that is our first retirement of today's session of our 13 drivers. Muller CJ out on what was a lap 32, I believe, for Muller CJ, whereas we're on lap 34 currently. Now it's worth noting in terms of battles out on circuit at the moment that Jack has opened up the gap to Plux to 4 seconds at this point. He's reopened it up. It was down at 3.8 seconds moments ago, but he's reopened it up a little bit. I think Plux is absolutely pushing to try and close up. The fastest lap right now, interestingly enough, is being held by Sir Bottlejob, who is on a charge to get himself past Awesome Alex. I think he'll want to know that he's safe and secure on the bottom step of the podium. And that fastest lap being a 1:12.0. We're seeing some incredible fastest laps right now, and we do have to wonder if we're going to see a 1:11.9 before the end of this race, because the fastest lap is worth 2 points, and we know our drivers can do 1:11.9s in race trim when they've got minimum fuel and the tyres are in their optimum condition. Meanwhile, further back, we can see that with Flapjack having passed Sean, it's now G-Rabbit's turn to try and get past the British driver. The Finn will look for a move, and most likely coming up into either turn 8, 9, alternatively on the rundown to turn 1 on lap 36. And again, up front, we know that Awesome Alex is still battling away. And as my apologies, we were going to jump away there briefly. We see that G-Rabbit did try to go for a little move there, but it didn't work out. And Awesome Alex has pulled into the pits. That's why we're switching away to see whether that had happened. But Mr. Sean right now holding off the charging finishman for the time being. And the finishman is into the wall. Oh no, that is an absolute disaster for G-Rabbit, and I think he just carried too much momentum there through turn number 9, yep, and he's gone wide there, and he's tried to plant the power, and with the understeer invoked by the dirty of Mr. Sean's car, he's just run wide, and that is a disaster for the Finn. He was doing so well in that battle for the midfield, and now he'll fall all the way back. That'll be heavy damage on the car, and he'll know that will interrupt his stint, so he's going to have to get the car repaired and get back out there. But that is something you don't want with only a quarter of the race to go. Oh goodness me, no. But still, that means where it's his loss, it's Senna's gain, and Senna is now up into P10, Gadget up into P9, Berkey up into P8, and Sean will be thinking to himself, well, thank goodness for that. And you can see that we saw just coming out of the pit, G-Rabbit has switched to a set of softs. I think he's going to try and go to the end now on simply a set of softs. And going through turn 1 at this point, we can see that Plux has got Rice behind him, so they've lapped Rice. We just wanted to make sure it wasn't a potential mistake or a battle going on around, but really the closest drivers who are battling for position right now, it'll be Jaggernaut and Awesome Alex. And we know that in terms of how these guys are playing out, that Jaggernaut is on tyres which are more heavily worn, and we suspect that Jaggernaut may be trying to go to the end currently. Alternatively, he'll have one more stop to go, and we know that Alex will most likely have one more stop to go, so it's about who's going to flinch first, because at the end of the day as well, both of these drivers really on similar amounts of fuel, and we'll double check that actually for you, ladies and gentlemen, the fuel situation. Jaggernaut on a bit less fuel, so he might have to take some fuel on the pits, and Alex will want to get himself as close as possible to know if it is literally one more stop for the pair of them, he can jump. Jaggernaut will be as close as possible to effect a pass in the closing stages of the race here, but it's going to be a close one in the battle for P4. Bottlejob quite some way up the road, and unless Bottlejob makes a mistake here, I think he's going to feel very safe and sound with P3 today, 20 seconds off of P2, which is Plux the Duck currently. So I don't think we're going to be seeing a change for P3 anytime soon. As we look further through the field, Flapjack running a quiet P6 right now, having got past everybody who was running around him, and we do know that Mr. Sean has made a pit stop. That's what we're hearing, and we'll just double check the information. Yeah, he's made the pit stop. He's picked up the fuel as well. We've got a blue flag for Mr. Sean as our race leader is coming through, and Sean now will know that he's going to the end, having made his third and final stop for today, going on to another set of softs, and he'll be wondering whether he can close the gap to Senna, Gadget and Berkey simply through the pit stops and potentially gain the places and then go defensive for the final couple of laps. Sean here pulling the strategic blinder potentially in the battle for what is P7 in Sean's mind. What a G-Rabbit dropping out of the racing order there after the incident, only some laps to go. Now Sean coming through at turn number 12 once again. Berkey baby now into the pits. So we're going to stay with Sean here, and we're going to switch to his onboard camera. And remember, look to your left hand side as also Senna pulls into pits. So we know Sean's got the place on Senna. But what about Berkey baby? Berkey's coming out of the pits right now. And I believe, in fact, well, Sean's had to lift as well. That's why he lost a bit of pace and why his car went so quiet on us. And I think Sean will think, right, I've got P9 guaranteed, but I won't have P8 right now. But can I close up on Gadget or simply capitalise on a mistake on another driver if all these drivers are running to the end now with there being 13 minutes remaining? So it'll be in Sean's mind in terms of what is possible at this point. In the rear of your shot, you can see that Rice is being attacked by G-Rabbit. And Rice being on those heavily worn super softs, and G-Rabbit being on soft tyres by comparison. And I think G-Rabbit will think he's got this done and will be expecting Rice to pit in the near future as well. G-Rabbit trying to sneak his way back into that top 10, and I'm hopeful for the Finn he can do after what has been a good race hampered by one critical moment. And G-Rabbit will do his utmost here because we know he has got a lot of pace in that Lexus. He's just got to try and make sure he doesn't make another mistake. As he's coming through here into turn at number 9, not going for the move, but he's getting closer and closer to the back of Rice's GTR, the 2016 cars, and both machines being of 2016 eras, both charging through at 10 and 11 then, And as they come up into the braking zone for 12, G-Rabbit trying to plant the car as much as possible to get as close as possible, running a little bit wide there, and I think that might have just been within the limits. Yeah, it's just worked out for G-Rabbit, and now will he have the legs to overtake the GTR? We know the GTR is faster initially on the acceleration zone down the straight, but they're similar in terms of top speed, and G-Rabbit not able to get it done here, but getting closer and closer by the moment as Rice goes wide out of 1, and it means that Rabbit has been able to get past going through into 2, and Rice will be pitting soon, surely, with such heavily worn tyres. But Bottle Job right now running away with that P3, and behind him, of course, we can see that the gap between Alex and Jagannat getting ever closer, with Alex bringing that gap down to 9/10 of a second, and with not that much time remaining, 11 minutes remaining now, Alex will know the clock is against him as Jagannat goes out into the grass there, feeling the wear on those left-hand tyres out of 1, and he'll be thinking to himself at this point, I have to pick the right time to stop versus Alex, and he'll know that if Alex doesn't hit, then Alex is going to have heavily worn super softs by the end of the race, and he'll want to capitalise on that. But looking further around the field here, G-Rabbit still pulling away from Rice. Rice not being able to get the regain at any point. And Senna in the rear of the shot, really, of those two. As we see our race leader in the form of Jack is now into the pits for what is suspected to be his final pit stop, with the car being on critical fuel. Plux the Duck also into the pits, having saved a little bit of fuel on that previous stint. But I think the gap is going to be something that's going to be closed down on track here by both drivers in terms of battling for that lead. But the battle that's on right now is the battle for P4, and Alex is trying to get as close as possible to Jagannat. He will want to affect that pass if he can on track and essentially cost Jagannat the time in terms of overall race time here. We see there's no change up front in terms of Jack versus Plux as Bottle Job is into the pits. He'll take on a small amount of fuel, and will we expect Jagannat to pull over? He does pull over, right, so Jagannat is the first to flinch. He's going to put on a fresh set of tyres, and in terms of Bottle Job is in the pits now. Alex, has he got enough fuel to go to the end? I don't think Alex has. That's going to be critical. I think Alex here is not going to be in contention for the P3, but he is going to have to stop very soon, with Jagannat taking on a rather sizable amount of fuel for the final stint, and Flapjack now into the pits as well. All these strategies overlapping as well here. If Alex is going to go to the end, that is going to be one conservative drive in the attempt to get the bottom step of the podium. But never say never, of course. And up front, the gap between our race leader and second place is now 5 seconds. It has opened up after that round of pit stops overall. And as we look around the field here, all of the stops occurring. Again, Mr. Sean, the one who has gained P8 through Gadget coming out of the pits over the recent laps. And Sean really on the charge here to try and just simply bring the car home in the highest possible position. And we know that if Berkey Baby has to make another stop, for example, Sean will be ahead of Berkey Baby, which could be critical in the mid-championship points table, as we know that Sean here is really trying to get as many points and wrangle them out of each race, as is Berkey Baby, of course, and Gadget behind him, all in that mega battle for P3 in the standings. But looking around, we can see that Alex coming through once again, and I'll be honest with you folks, if he's able to get that car to the end on the fuel remaining, well, tell you what, I'll buy you dinner, because I don't think it's going to be happening in all honesty. I think he is going to have to pit, but then it is the gap between Alex and Jagannat is critical. Now, that gap currently stands, as we look at the timings between Bottle Job and the two other drivers, that gap is currently 12.8 seconds, but it is closing fast, and Alex will need to respond. I suspect the response from Alex will be on this lap. He will know he has got to pit with a matter of urgency. He can go hell for leather once he's pitted, mind you, but he needs to pit, because otherwise Jagannat is going to simply overtake him through strategy, and then Alex has got it all to do as they go into the final 7 minutes of the race. And Mr. Sean here still holding on to that P8 as we look back to Gadget right now. Gadget charging through on his fresh superstars after his final stop. He's got the fuel to go to the end, of course. And Gadget here having a bit of a quiet race now by comparison with some of the other drivers around him, and hasn't really kicked off too much for Gadget today. He was caught up in a bit of the midfield battles earlier on, and nothing worked out massively for Gadget. In fact, there were a number of incidents which I think the stewards are going to be having to dissect, particularly with the whole kerfuffle earlier on, as Awesome Alex comes into the pits. Now that means so Bottle Job will be back into P3, we can expect that. But the question is, where will this man, the Frenchman Jagannat, be coming out in relation to Alex? Will he pass Alex through strategy, or will Alex come out in front? Alex is just leaving the pit exit, ladies and gentlemen. So look, and we can see that Alex is going to be side by side, almost coming into turn one, not quite. And Alex has done it on the strategy. So now, with 7 minutes remaining, it is going to be a chase for P4 all the way to the end. Will it be Awesome Alex or Jagannat who brings home P4? Time will tell, of course. But these guys will be absolutely wanting to hammer it. Now, Jagernauts tyres will, of course, have a couple more laps wearing them compared to Alex's, but you can imagine both drivers will have fueled their cars so they can go absolutely full attack here, and it's all about whether Alex can get Jaggernaut out of his slipstream. If he can, then he will have a major advantage around the circuit, whereas if Jaggernaut is still in that slipstream zone when they come onto the start-finish straight, then Jaggernaut is going to have a huge advantage, because that GTR from 2008 will probably hit in the slipstream a top-end speed of 180 miles an hour with dedicated slipstream. But you can see that so far that gap has opened up. There's nothing else happening on track right now, so we're going to roll with these guys, if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen. And so as Jaggernaut comes into the final corner, then he tries to nail the rotation, and it looks as though he hasn't quite nailed it. And now on acceleration, you'll see that gap is opening up considerably initially, and it will close up a little bit towards the end, as we'll see that Jaggernaut starts to get towards 175 miles an hour before the braking zone. 175 just literally on braking, and that's where he closes up a little bit versus Alex. But Alex having a very strong run out the final corner, and that's how he was able to open up the gap. And as we look further back here, we can see that there's blue flags. I believe the driver has had to give way, and I think that's G-Rabbit giving way to what is our race leader, Isofix's Jack, and you have to give way to Plux the Duck shortly, and Gadget's having to do so shortly as well. So that's why we're seeing a lot of drivers essentially seeming to close up on the circuit at the moment, because we have got our lead runners going through the back markers. As we can see that Plux is flashing G-Rabbit to let him know he is coming through and that he wants the Finn to get out the way. But enough of this for now. Let's stay with the battle for P4, where it actually seems to have opened up quite a bit, as Jaggernaut has now dropped to 1.5 seconds back on Awesome Alex. So I don't think there's going to be a battle anytime soon, unfortunately for you folks. And really, right now, in terms of our closest drivers out on circuit, there's not really anybody close enough to be battling immediately with 5 minutes to go. And we can see that in terms of the fastest lap, it is still Sir Bottlejob with that 1:12.0. And I don't think either Jack or Plux will be pitting here to go for that fastest lap. They'll both want to stay out, because they'll know that if either of them makes a mistake, well, from Plux's perspective, if Jack makes a mistake here, he'll be on for the race win, or a chance of the race win. And he will want that so desperately, because he knows that he's got more points to essentially lose by comparison with Jack, as both drivers come to the end of their 6th race completed in season 6, as we described at the start of tonight's program. But Jack right now just cruising around. There's only approximately 4 more laps to go for Jack. I think he'll be thinking to himself at this point that he can afford to back the wick off if he needs to, but he's got the job done. As we look around, and we can see that Alex has opened up that gap on Jaggernaut now to 1.8 seconds. I think he'll feel that the job's done. Blackjack 20 seconds down on Jaggernaut in P6, but a good 5.8 seconds ahead of Berkey. He's got ample fuel and whatnot to get to the end. Berkey baby, of course, now. I think he'll feel he's got ample fuel to get to the end. I think he's overfueled that Nissan, in fact. And Sean, I don't think he's going to be able to get close enough to Berkey on the coming laps. What with Sean's soft tyres now starting to feel the wear, and he'll start to fall off of his optimum pace a bit. He'll have the fuel to get to the end. Gadget behind him, of course, chasing after him, but quite a way back from Sean. I think Gadget will be ruining the fact he hasn't been able to take the battle to Sean as much as he would have liked here, as he is 6.3 seconds down the road with our faster drivers coming through, and the fact that they've had to be given the space. And G-Rabbit here in P10 right now. Again, a quiet one for G-Rabbit right now, but it was all because of one mistake, as Senna's having to burn off a penalty at this point. And I think run wide out the final corner, that's where you normally pick up the penalty for. 2.7 seconds between himself and Rice, who's the last of our remaining runners on circuit. I think Rice, he'll want to try and get that P11 if he can, and be aware of the fact that Senna's got to burn his penalty gradually. Remember, we don't have any dedicated burning zones in terms of penalties, ladies and gentlemen. Instead, our drivers are expected to burn the penalties over the course of the race distance, and you can do so by simply lifting before braking into a corner, alternatively by just simply lifting off the throttle a little bit as you're starting to accelerate down the straight, and that will help burn off a small amount of the penalty. Our drivers will, of course, mastered methods in order to avoid effectively losing too much time. As we can see, actually an emergency pit stop for G-Rabbit to take on some fuel to go in and put a set of superstars on. So G-Rabbit's woes go from bad to worse, as that means he is the last of our remaining runners. And with 3 laps to go for G-Rabbit, well, yep, just about 3 rabbits based on our calculations, I think he'll be trying to charge after Rice on a set of superstars to try and get P11 in the final hour. But it's all settling down with 2.5 minutes to go. And looking around right now, nobody's really close enough to be affected. Hold on a second. What on earth has happened to Bottlejob? He has dropped off massively. Now, Bottlejob here, I think, off camera, what has happened to Bottlejob, in fact, is... has he got enough fuel to get to the end? Because he's been closed up massively I think, no, Bottlejob has picked up damage. Now, where has he picked that damage up from? We don't know, but this is a disaster for Bottlejob. I get the feeling it has probably been out of the final sector on lap 46 because he has lost so much time and he's got so much damage to the front and the right-hand side of the car. It was the right-hand side, yeah, it was the front right panel, and that means that front right wheel's gone. And Alex is through into P3, and we're seeing a change here for the bottom step of the podium, and that has got to have been, well, where could it have been in terms of doing all that damage to the car? Well, it must have been in, say, the final two corners here or under braking into 12, because you wouldn't normally get the damage. If you were going to hit the wall out of 9, it would be on the left-hand side of the car. Goodness me, Bottlejob, that is a shocker. And now that means he's dropped down to P4, and he's going to have just over one more lap. He's going to have 2 laps to go at this rate. And, well, to hold off Jaganat here, who's going to come across the line as well. And there's a surprise right at the end here, and Bottlejob is fighting that car to try and stay with Awesome Alex and stay away from the charging Frenchman behind him. And Flapjack in P6, Berkey Raven in P7 right now. None of the guys behind have really closed up. And we've got G-Rabbit who's getting closer in the battle for P11 here versus Rice. So we'll keep our eyes on that, and Senna's only 2 seconds up the road, so G-Rabbit could go for a double here. But really, it's that battle for P3 right now, and Bottlejob is struggling. That car is so heavily wounded, and you can see that Jaganat is getting closer and closer, but he's not getting close enough right now. And meanwhile, in that battle for P11, we can see that all the drivers here will do one more lap, and G-Rabbit is going to have the run, I think, going all the way down to turn number 1, but he won't be able to affect the pass here. But coming out into turn number 10, we can see that Awesome Alex has pulled away, and Bottlejob is falling more and more back into the clutches of Jaganat. Now, will Jaganat go for the move here? As you can see, Bottlejob is defending immediately, and Jaganat will have the acceleration, and Jaganat goes very wide out the final corner. Now, is that a penalty for Jaganat? He's picked up a 2-second penalty, so it's all about who's going to burn it and who's going to hold on, as both drivers are going to have to complete another lap. And that means right now Jaganat has got to find a way of burning that penalty, because that's a disaster for Jaganat, and Bottlejob just needs to hug the rear of Jaganat's car, as coming out of the final corner to complete his race will be Flapjack, who's going to bring the car home in P6, and he'll be the first of our finishers on lap 48 after a very hard fought and long race for Flapjack there. So coming across the line there, we've got Berkey Baby who's going to come across the line to pick up P7. And at the rear of your camera shot, ladies and gentlemen, your race winner, Zephyx's Jack. Followed across the line by Mr. Sean in P8. Then we are going to have Plux the Duck, who has run out of fuel on the finish line, ladies and gentlemen. And Big Gadget comes home in P9, but Plux the Duck is going to be coming across the line. We're assuming what is going to be P2, as Senna comes through for P10. And G-Rabbit has run out of fuel as well on the finish line. Is he going to hold? And Rice has run out of fuel as well. This is crazy. Everybody's run out of fuel on the finish line. But that means that G-Rabbit picks up P11. Rice comes home in P12. Alex is going to come home in P3. Jaganat still has 7/10 of a second of a penalty, but he has been able to break the gap to Bottlejob here. So I think Jaganat is going to hold on to P4. Goodness me. He's brought it home P4. And the last half finish is Bottlejob in P5. That was a crazy and random ending, but your race winner, ladies and gentlemen, Jack from Zephyx Motorsport. What a crazy ending to the race, in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen. We've just had it in from one of our trackside observers who are sitting around the track for G-Rabbit's team, that G-Rabbit had a little bit of an incident with Rice right at the end, whereby there was some contact. So Rice was a sportsman and G-Rabbit was a sportsman and let Rice back through. So that's why you saw what happened there. But your final standings after what was a very strange end to the race. Race winner, Zephyx's Jack, followed by Plux the Duck, then Awesome Alex finishing off the podium, and then finish off the top 5, Jaganat in P4 and Bottlejob in P5. Senna holding on to P10, Gadget in that P9, and Mr. Sean holding on for what was a hard-earned P8 there. Congratulations to all of our winners, of course, and congratulations as the fastest lap went to Sir Bottlejob with a 1:12.0, a phenomenal lap by the GTR driver there from the United Kingdom.
And with that, that's all we've got time for today. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and or subscribe to both my channel and also the official Drivers Room YouTube channel, as may be found in the description of this video. But until next time, I've been your host TX141 or Britain a Spit, and remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, stay on track.